Imagine hiking alone in the Appalachian Mountains miles away from the nearest road. No signal, no people, just endless forest. And then, you hear someone whisper your name from the trees. But here's the terrifying part. You never told anyone you were there. Welcome back to my channel. I am your host Mike. Tonight's story comes from a hiker who spent a night on the Appalachian Trail in North Carolina, and what happened to him out there still doesn't make sense. If you enjoy real creepy stories from the wilderness, make sure you stay till the end, because this one gets disturbing. Back in 2019, a solo hiker named Daniel decided to hike a remote section of the Appalachian Trail near the Smoky Mountains. It was supposed to be a simple overnight trip. He started hiking around 3 p.m., planning to reach a small campsite before sunset. But as evening came, the forest got strangely quiet. No birds, no insects, just the sound of the wind moving through the trees. Daniel thought it was weird but kept hiking. About an hour later, he reached the campsite. It was empty, which was odd, because the Appalachian Trail usually has other hikers around. Still, he set up his tent and started cooking dinner. And that's when he heard it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps. Crunching leaves. But when he looked toward the trail, there was no one there. Daniel assumed another hiker was nearby, so he called out, "Hello." Silence. Then suddenly, from somewhere deep in the trees, a whisper, soft, barely audible, but clear enough to understand, said, "Daniel?" His heart dropped. He froze, because he hadn't told anyone his name that day. Not a single person. He grabbed his flashlight and pointed it toward the forest. Nothing. Just trees. But the footsteps started again, circling the campsite, slowly, like someone walking around his tent. But when he shined the light again, still nothing. Daniel zipped up his tent and stayed completely still. The footsteps continued for almost 20 minutes. Then, they stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. And then suddenly, right next to his tent, the whisper again, but this time louder. "Daniel, come out here." At that point, he didn't move. He didn't speak. He didn't even breathe loudly, because whatever was outside didn't sound human anymore. The voice was distorted, almost like multiple voices whispering together. Eventually, sometime around sunrise, the sound stopped. Daniel waited until daylight, then packed his gear as fast as possible. When he stepped outside his tent, he noticed something strange. There were footprints all around the campsite, but none of them led into the forest. Every single footprint ended right near his tent, like whatever had been walking around him never left. Daniel hiked out immediately, and to this day he refuses to hike that section of the Appalachian Trail again, because he still can't explain one terrifying question. If those footprints never left, where did whatever made them go? On January 1st, 2008, a 24-year-old woman named Meredith Emerson decided to spend New Year's Day hiking. She chose a beautiful section of the Appalachian Trail near Blood Mountain in northern Georgia. Meredith loved hiking. She was experienced, confident, and she wasn't alone. Her dog Ella, a black Labrador mix, was hiking with her. The trail was busy that day. Many hikers were out enjoying the cool winter weather. But several people noticed something unusual. A strange man was walking along the trail with his dog. Witnesses later said he looked dirty, aggressive, and out of place. At one point, the man approached Meredith and started talking to her. Some hikers said the conversation looked uncomfortable. One witness even saw Meredith trying to distance herself from him. But the man kept following her along the trail. Around the afternoon, hikers reported seeing Meredith again. But this time something was different. She was walking quickly, and the strange man was still nearby. That was the last time anyone saw Meredith alive. When she didn't return home that night, her family immediately became worried. They knew Meredith was responsible. She would never just disappear. The next morning, search teams began combing the mountains. Volunteers, helicopters, and police searched miles of forest. Then they found something disturbing. Meredith's car was still parked at the trailhead, and her dog Ella was found wandering nearby. but Meredith was gone. Witnesses quickly told investigators about the strange man on the trail. Police released a sketch based on descriptions from hikers. It didn't take long before someone recognized him. His name was Gary Michael Hilton, and he had a criminal past. Police soon tracked him down in Florida. After hours of questioning, he finally confessed. Hilton admitted that he had been following Meredith on the Appalachian Trail. He approached her while hiking. Then he forced her deep into the woods. For several days he held her captive. Eventually, he murdered her. The news shocked the entire hiking community. The Appalachian Trail had always been seen as a peaceful escape into nature. But this case proved something terrifying. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the forest is another human. Gary Michael Hilton was eventually sentenced to life in prison. But the story of Meredith Emerson still serves as a reminder for hikers everywhere. Even in the most beautiful places, danger can still be hiding on the trail. In July of 2013, Geraldine Largay was hiking through the dense forests of Maine. Among other hikers on the trail, she was known by her trail name Inchworm. She was 66 years old and hiking with her husband, George. However, the couple sometimes hiked separately during the day. They would simply agree to meet later at the next campsite. On the morning of July 22nd, Geraldine stepped off the trail for a moment. According to investigators, she likely stepped off to use the restroom. It's something hikers do all the time. But when she tried to return to the trail, she couldn't find it. At first, Geraldine believed she would quickly relocate the path. So she began walking through the forest. But the deeper she walked, the more disoriented she became. The forest in that part of Maine is extremely dense. Tall trees block the sunlight. And from ground level, everything looks the same. Within a short time, she realized she was completely lost. When Geraldine didn't meet her husband later that day, he immediately reported her missing. A massive search began. More than 200 searchers, helicopters, tracking dogs, and volunteers combed the forest. They searched for days, then weeks, then months, but they found nothing. It was as if Geraldine had simply vanished into the wilderness. The search was eventually called off. 4 years, her disappearance remained a mystery. 2 years later, in 2015, a logging surveyor was working in the woods near the Appalachian Trail. While walking through the forest, he noticed something unusual. A small campsite. Inside the tent were personal belongings. A backpack, a journal, and human remains. Investigators soon confirmed the heartbreaking truth. The campsite belonged to Geraldine Largay. Her body was found less than 2 miles away from the Appalachian Trail. But in that thick forest, 2 miles can feel like an entirely different world. Inside her journal, Geraldine had written messages while she waited for rescue. In one entry she wrote, "I have called 911 many times but there is no signal." In another message she left a note for whoever might find her. It simply said, "When you find my body, please call my husband and daughter." The words showed she never gave up hope that someone would eventually find her. But unfortunately, no one did in time. Investigators believe Geraldine stayed in one place, hoping rescuers would locate her. It was the correct survival decision. But the dense forest made it incredibly difficult for search teams to see her campsite. Her story remains one of the most tragic reminders of how unforgiving the wilderness can be. Even experienced hikers can become lost, and sometimes, help can be closer than you think, yet still impossible to find. In the summer of 2011, Scott Lilly was hiking through the Appalachian Trail near Waynesboro, Virginia. Scott was a college student who loved the outdoors. He had spent several days hiking and camping along the trail. On August 10th, Scott was last seen by other hikers near a popular camping area close to the trail. Everything seemed normal. He was friendly, relaxed, and excited to continue his hike. But the next day, Scott suddenly disappeared. His friends and family became worried when they couldn't reach him. Soon, a search operation began. Rescue teams searched the forest surrounding the trail. Eventually, searchers made a disturbing discovery. Scott's body was found in a wooded area not far from the trail. At first, investigators believed his death might have been caused by wildlife. The Appalachian wilderness is home to animals like bears and coyotes. But something about the scene didn't look right. There were signs that suggested Scott may have been attacked by another person. Authorities began investigating the area around the Appalachian Trail. Several people who lived near the forest were questioned. One person quickly caught investigators' attention. A man named James Hott. Hott lived in the woods not far from where Scott's body was discovered. He had a violent criminal history and had been living in a makeshift campsite deep in the forest. When investigators searched his camp, they discovered disturbing evidence linking him to the crime. Eventually, Hott confessed. He admitted that he encountered Scott near the trail. What happened during that encounter turned deadly. The idea that someone was living hidden in the woods near the Appalachian Trail shocked many hikers. The trail is often seen as a peaceful escape into nature. But Scott Lilly's case revealed something terrifying. Sometimes the danger in the wilderness doesn't come from animals. It comes from people hiding in places no one expects. In 2012, James Hott was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. But the story of Scott Lilly still spreads among hikers as a warning, because even on one of the most famous trails in America, you never truly know who might be out there in the woods. In May of 1981, two young campers were spending the night near the Appalachian Trail in Virginia's George Washington National Forest. The couple had set up a small campsite surrounded by thick forest. It was the kind of place hikers love. Quiet, peaceful, completely removed from the outside world. That evening, they cooked dinner and relaxed by their tent as the sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains. Eventually, they went to sleep. The forest around them was dark and silent. But sometime during the night, someone was moving through the woods. A man had been wandering the forest nearby. His name was Randall Lee Smith. He had a violent past and had been drifting through the area. At some point, he discovered the couple's campsite. Instead of leaving, he approached their tent. What happened next turned the peaceful campsite into a nightmare. Smith attacked the couple while they slept. The assault was sudden and brutal. The man was killed during the attack. Miraculously, the woman survived and later managed to get help. The crime shocked authorities and hikers throughout the region. The Appalachian Trail had always been considered a relatively safe place for outdoor travelers. But now people realized that even in the remote wilderness, danger could still appear. Police began searching the surrounding forest for the attacker. Not long after the attack, Randall Lee Smith was captured by authorities. He was arrested and charged for the violent crime. During the investigation, it became clear that Smith had been wandering the area before discovering the campsite. His actions that night left a lasting impact on the hiking community. For many hikers, the Appalachian Trail represents adventure and freedom. Stretching more than 2,000 miles across the eastern United States, it passes through some of the most beautiful wilderness in the country. But the story of Randall Lee Smith remains one of the trail's darkest chapters. It serves as a reminder that while nature itself can be dangerous, sometimes the greatest danger comes from other people. After the attack, Randall Lee Smith was convicted and sentenced to prison. But the story of that night in 1981 still circulates among hikers who travel the Appalachian Trail. Because when you're deep in the mountains, far from civilization, you never truly know who might be out there in the darkness.
Before we jump into the next story, if you're enjoying the video, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. All right, let's move on to the next story.
On October 6, 1981, 58-year-old Thelma Pauline Melton joined a group of friends for a hike in the Great Smoky Mountains. The group was exploring a scenic route near Clingman's Dome, one of the most visited areas of the park. It was a beautiful fall day. The air was cool. The mountains were covered in autumn colors. The group began hiking along the trail together, enjoying the peaceful forest around them. At one point, they stopped to take a short break. Some members of the group walked ahead along the trail. Others stayed behind. When everyone regrouped a few minutes later, Thelma was gone. At first, her friends assumed she had simply walked ahead, but when they continued down the trail, she wasn't there. They searched nearby areas and called out her name. No response. Within hours, park rangers were notified, and one of the largest search operations in the park's history began. More than 200 searchers joined the effort. Helicopters scanned the forest from above. Tracking dogs searched the trails. Volunteers combed through miles of rugged terrain. The search lasted for weeks, but investigators faced a major problem. The forests of the Great Smoky Mountains are incredibly dense. Thick vegetation, steep slopes, and deep valleys make it easy for someone to become disoriented. Search teams expected to find some kind of clue. A backpack, a piece of clothing, anything. But nothing was ever found. No footprints, no belongings, no sign of what happened to her. It was as if Thelma Melton had simply vanished into the mountains. Over the years, many theories have been suggested. Some believe she may have wandered off the trail and become lost in the wilderness. Others believe she may have fallen down a steep mountainside where searchers couldn't see her. But some hikers who know the area find that explanation difficult to accept, because Thelma disappeared from a trail that was busy with people that day. And yet, no one saw where she went. No one heard her call for help. Her disappearance remains one of the most mysterious cases in the history of the park. More than 4 decades later, the fate of Thelma Pauline Melton is still unknown. The mountains where she disappeared remain some of the most beautiful wilderness in America. But they also remind hikers of something important. When you're deep in the forest, surrounded by miles of wilderness, sometimes people can disappear without leaving a single trace. In 1996, 2 hikers were traveling through Shenandoah National Park along the Appalachian Trail. After a long day of hiking, they decided to camp for the night in a quiet area of the forest. It was a perfect evening for camping. The mountains were calm, the sky was clear, and the forest was silent except for the sounds of insects and wind moving through the trees. The hikers settled into their tent and eventually fell asleep. But sometime during the night, someone else was moving through the woods. A man had been wandering through the park carrying a firearm. His name was Walter David Hinton. At some point, he came across the hikers' campsite. Instead of walking away, he approached the tent. Without warning, Hinton opened fire on the sleeping hikers. The sudden gunshots shattered the silence of the mountains. The attack was chaotic and terrifying. One of the hikers was seriously injured. Miraculously, the victims managed to survive the encounter and escape. After reaching safety, authorities were quickly alerted. The peaceful national park suddenly became the center of a major criminal investigation. Law enforcement began searching the park for the attacker. Because Shenandoah National Park covers hundreds of miles of rugged wilderness, tracking the suspect was extremely difficult. But eventually, investigators identified the gunman as Walter David Hinton. He was arrested and later faced charges related to the shooting. The incident shocked both park visitors and the hiking community. Many people viewed the Appalachian Trail as one of the safest outdoor experiences in the country. But this attack revealed a chilling truth. Even in remote wilderness areas, unexpected danger can appear without warning. Today, millions of people still hike the Appalachian Trail every year. And most of the time, the trail remains a peaceful escape into nature. But stories like this one continue to circulate among hikers. Because when you're deep in the mountains, far from help, sometimes the greatest danger is another person you never expected to meet. During the late 1990s, hikers traveling through remote areas of the Appalachian Trail began reporting strange encounters. Several hikers said they noticed the same man appearing on the trail repeatedly. At first, nothing seemed too unusual. The Appalachian Trail is long, and hikers often see the same people multiple times along different sections. But soon, hikers started noticing something disturbing. The man never spoke to anyone. He rarely used the main trail. And sometimes he appeared silently in the forest watching campsites from a distance. One hiker reported waking up early in the morning and noticing someone standing between the trees. The figure didn't move. He just stood there, watching. When the hiker called out, the figure slowly walked back into the forest. Other hikers reported hearing footsteps around their campsites at night. But when they shined their flashlights into the trees, there was no one there. Eventually, park rangers began hearing about these reports. The descriptions from different hikers all sounded similar. A man moving quietly through the woods, avoiding other hikers, watching campsites from the forest. Authorities eventually began looking into the situation. Because the Appalachian Trail crosses many remote areas, it can be difficult to monitor every section. But eventually, investigators identified a man who had been illegally camping near sections of the trail for long periods of time. He had been living deep in the woods and occasionally moving through the trail system. While he had not attacked anyone, authorities became concerned about his behavior around hikers. Eventually, he was removed from the area by law enforcement. For most hikers, the Appalachian Trail is a place of adventure and peace. But stories like this remind people of something unsettling. Even in the quiet wilderness, you might not always be as alone as you think. Sometimes, someone else might be watching from the trees. In the early 2010s, hikers traveling through a remote section of the Appalachian Trail noticed something unusual. A backpack had been left near a campsite along the trail. At first, other hikers assumed the owner had simply stepped away. This was common on the trail. But after several hours, the backpack was still there. Eventually, authorities were notified. Search teams began exploring the surrounding forest. Not long after, they discovered the body of a solo hiker not far from the trail. At first, investigators believed the death might have been caused by natural causes or an accident. But several things about the scene raised questions. The hiker's gear was still neatly arranged at the campsite. There were no clear signs of animal attacks. And there were no signs of a struggle. Authorities examined the area carefully. The Appalachian Trail runs through rugged terrain, with steep slopes, rocky paths, and unpredictable weather. Sometimes hikers suffer injuries or medical emergencies in remote areas. But investigators struggled to determine exactly what had happened in this case. No witnesses reported hearing anything unusual. No one remembered seeing the hiker in distress. The cause of death remained unclear for some time. Cases like this are rare, but they serve as a reminder of how unpredictable the wilderness can be. The Appalachian Trail stretches across more than 2,000 miles of mountains and forests. And while millions of people hike it safely every year, the wilderness can sometimes hold mysteries that are never fully explained. On June 14, 1969, the Martin family was camping in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. They had chosen a popular camping area called Spence Field, a grassy clearing surrounded by dense forest. Spence Field sits near a section of the Appalachian Trail and is a favorite spot for hikers and campers. That afternoon, Dennis was playing with other children in the campsite. Like many kids, they decided to play a small prank on the adults. The plan was simple. The children would hide behind nearby bushes and trees. Then they would jump out to scare their parents. The kids split up and ran into the nearby forest. Moments later, the children jumped out laughing. But something was wrong. Dennis never appeared. At first, the adults assumed he was still hiding. They called his name. They checked behind trees and bushes. But Dennis was nowhere to be found. Within minutes, the situation turned from confusion to panic. Park rangers were immediately notified. What followed became one of the largest search operations in the history of the national park system. More than 1,400 people joined the search. Volunteers, park rangers, police officers, and even the U.S. military helped search the mountains. Helicopters scanned the forest from above. Tracking dogs searched the trails. Search teams combed through miles of rugged terrain. But the search teams faced a serious challenge. The forests of the Smoky Mountains are incredibly dense. Steep slopes, thick vegetation, and deep ravines make it easy for someone to disappear quickly. Despite days of searching, there was still no sign of Dennis. During the search, investigators received a strange report from a nearby family. A man hiking in the park claimed he saw something unusual. He said he spotted a rough-looking man carrying something over his shoulder while moving quickly through the woods. At first, the witness assumed it was a hunter carrying equipment. But later, he began to wonder if the man had actually been carrying a child. Investigators tried to track down the mysterious man, but they were never able to identify him. The lead eventually went cold. As days turned into weeks, hope slowly began to fade. No clothing, no footprints, no clues. It was as if Dennis Martin had simply vanished into the mountains. Over the years, many theories have been suggested. Some believe Dennis may have become lost in the wilderness. Others believe he may have fallen into a hidden ravine. And some believe the mysterious man seen by the witness may have been involved. But after decades of investigation, the truth remains unknown. More than 50 years later, the disappearance of Dennis Martin remains one of the most haunting mysteries connected to the mountains of the Appalachian region. The forests where he vanished still attract thousands of hikers every year. But those who know the story sometimes wonder how a child standing just a few feet away from his family could disappear without leaving a single trace.
Before we jump into the next story, if you're enjoying the video, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Alright, let's move on to the next story.
On October 8, 1976, a group of high school students traveled to the Great Smoky Mountains for a field trip. The students were excited. The Smoky Mountains are famous for their incredible views, waterfalls, and hiking trails. The group planned to hike along a section of trail near Clingman's Dome, one of the highest points in the park. That area is also close to where the Appalachian Trail passes through the mountains. The weather that day was cool and slightly foggy, which is common in the Smoky Mountains. The students began hiking together along the trail. Among them was 16-year-old Trenny Gibson. She was described by friends as quiet, responsible, and excited about the trip. As the group hiked, they slowly spread out along the trail. Some students walked ahead, others stayed behind. Teachers and chaperones were scattered throughout the group. Everything seemed completely normal. But at one point, several students noticed something unusual. Trenny began acting strangely. Some classmates later said she looked confused. Others said she complained that her legs felt weak. But nothing seemed serious at the time. As the hike continued, students reached an area near the summit trail. A few people reported seeing Trenny sitting on a rock along the path. She told others she felt tired and planned to rest for a moment. Students continued walking ahead on the trail. Some said they passed her. Others said they saw her walking behind them. But within minutes, no one could find her anymore. At first, nobody thought much about it. They assumed she had simply walked ahead with another group of students. But when the hike ended and the group returned to the bus, Trenny was missing. Teachers quickly notified park rangers. Within hours, a massive search operation began. Rangers, volunteers, and rescue teams searched the forest around the trail. Helicopters flew overhead scanning the mountains. Search dogs tracked the area where Trenny was last seen. But the Smoky Mountains are extremely rugged. Thick forests cover steep hillsides and deep valleys. Even someone only a short distance off the trail can be incredibly difficult to locate. Still, search teams expected to find something. A footprint, a piece of clothing, anything. But they found nothing. As investigators spoke with witnesses, some unusual details emerged. One student claimed she saw a man walking through the woods near the trail. Another person reported hearing what sounded like a scream earlier in the day. However, none of these reports could be confirmed. No evidence ever connected them to Trenny's disappearance. Investigators also considered the possibility that she may have wandered off the trail and become lost. But experienced hikers pointed out something strange. The area where she disappeared was not extremely remote. It was close to a well-traveled trail with many people nearby. Yet somehow, no one saw where she went. Despite weeks of searching, Trenny Gibson was never found. No belongings, no clothing, no sign of what happened to her. Her disappearance remains one of the most mysterious cases in the history of the Smoky Mountains. Even today, hikers who visit the area sometimes think about the strange story of the girl who vanished on a busy hiking trail. A trail filled with people. A trail where someone should have seen something. But somehow, no one did. Nearly 50 years later, the fate of Trenny Gibson is still unknown. The trails of the Great Smoky Mountains continue to attract millions of visitors every year. But hidden among those beautiful forests is a mystery that has never been solved. Because on one foggy day in 1976, a teenage girl walked along a mountain trail and simply disappeared. In the spring of 1996, Julianne Williams and Laura Winans decided to go on a hiking trip together. The two women were experienced hikers who loved exploring nature. They chose Shenandoah National Park because of its beautiful trails and peaceful mountain scenery. During their trip, they set up camp in a quiet backcountry area along the Appalachian Trail. It was a place surrounded by forest, far away from roads and crowded tourist areas. The kind of place hikers go when they want to experience true wilderness. Other hikers passed through the area occasionally, but most of the time the forest was silent. Several hikers reported seeing the two women during the days before they disappeared. Witnesses said they appeared relaxed and happy during their trip. But some hikers also reported something unusual. They mentioned seeing a strange man in the area around the same time. The man was described as aggressive and unpredictable. One hiker even said the man made uncomfortable comments while passing by on the trail. At the time, no one thought much about it. Encounters with strangers can happen on long hiking trails. But soon, something disturbing would be discovered. When the women failed to return from their trip, authorities began searching the park. Eventually, investigators located their campsite deep in the forest. What they found shocked everyone. The campsite showed signs of a violent attack. Both women had been murdered. The peaceful mountains of Shenandoah National Park had suddenly become the scene of a horrifying crime. The FBI and park authorities launched a major investigation. Investigators spoke with dozens of hikers who had been in the area. Many of them mentioned the same suspicious man. Authorities eventually identified a suspect named Daryl David Rice. Rice had a history of violent behavior and had been seen near the park around the time of the murders. For years, the case remained a mystery. The evidence was complicated, and investigators struggled to prove exactly what happened. Eventually, Rice was charged in connection with the crime. The murders shocked hikers across the United States. The Appalachian Trail had always been seen as a peaceful escape into nature. Millions of people hike sections of the trail every year. But this case showed that even in remote wilderness, danger can still exist. For many hikers, the story became a reminder to stay aware of their surroundings while traveling through isolated areas. Today, Shenandoah National Park remains one of the most beautiful national parks in the country. Thousands of hikers walk the Appalachian Trail through these mountains every year. But hidden within the park's peaceful forests is the memory of a tragic event. A reminder that even the most beautiful places in nature can sometimes hide dark stories. On November 15, 2015, Tom Messick joined a group of friends for a hunting trip. Tom was 82 years old but still active and experienced in the outdoors. He had spent decades hunting in the Adirondack wilderness. The group planned to use a common hunting strategy called a drive. In this method, some hunters walked through the forest pushing deer toward other hunters waiting at specific positions. Tom volunteered to take one of the stationary positions. He sat on a small folding chair in the woods with his rifle. The other hunters spread out through the forest around him. Most of them were only 150 to 200 yards away, close enough that if anything unusual happened, someone should have heard it. The hunt began. Some members of the group slowly walked through the forest to push deer toward the waiting hunters. The drive only lasted about 30 minutes. When the hunters returned to the meeting point, everyone came back except Tom. At first, they assumed he simply walked back to the truck. But when they checked the area where he had been sitting, something strange was discovered. Tom's chair was still there. His rifle was leaning against a tree. But Tom himself was gone. The hunters immediately began searching the area. They called Tom's name and walked through the surrounding woods. But there was no answer. Soon authorities were notified and a massive search operation began. Search teams brought in tracking dogs, helicopters, and hundreds of volunteers. Over the next several days, they searched miles of forest. The Adirondack wilderness is vast and heavily wooded, but investigators expected to find at least some kind of clue. A footprint, a dropped item, anything. But they found nothing. No trail, no sign of a struggle, no indication of where Tom might have gone. Investigators considered several possible explanations. One theory suggested Tom may have wandered off and become lost, but people who knew him found that hard to believe. Tom was extremely familiar with the area, and his equipment was still sitting exactly where he had been placed. Another theory suggested he may have suffered a medical emergency and collapsed somewhere in the forest. But again, search teams found no trace. Even the tracking dogs were unable to find a scent trail leading away from the area. It was as if Tom Messick had simply vanished from the woods. The strange details of the case left investigators with many unanswered questions. How could someone disappear when other hunters were so close? Why did the dogs fail to pick up a trail? And why was none of his equipment disturbed? Even after years of investigation, the mystery remains unsolved. Tom Messick has never been found. Today, the forests of the Adirondack Mountains still attract hunters, hikers, and campers from all over the country. But for those who know this story, there's always a lingering question. How does a man sitting quietly in the woods, surrounded by people nearby, disappear without anyone hearing or seeing a thing? Kenny Veach was known for posting hiking videos online. He often explored remote areas around the Nevada desert. One day, while browsing YouTube, Kenny commented on another hiking video. In the comment, he mentioned something strange he had experienced during one of his hikes. Kenny claimed that during a previous trip, he had discovered a mysterious cave shaped like the letter M. But what he described next made people uneasy. He said when he stepped inside the cave, his body started vibrating, not from fear, but from some strange sensation he couldn't explain. According to Kenny, the feeling was so intense that he immediately ran out of the cave. He never went back. The comment quickly caught the attention of other YouTube users. People became curious about this strange M cave. They asked Kenny to go back and find the cave again. At first he refused. He said the experience had frightened him. But eventually he agreed to try locating it again. So Kenny planned another hike into the desert. This time he brought his camera. He uploaded a video showing himself walking through the rocky landscape of the mountains near Las Vegas. The video showed him searching for the mysterious cave. But by the end of the hike, he never found it, at least not on camera. Sometime later, Kenny decided to go hiking again. This time he went alone. He told people he wanted to try finding the cave once more. But after that trip, he never returned home. His girlfriend reported him missing. Authorities began searching the desert area where he often hiked. Search teams used helicopters to scan the mountains. Volunteers explored the area on foot. Eventually, they discovered something. Kenny's cell phone. It was found near an abandoned mine shaft. But Kenny himself was nowhere to be found. Investigators searched the surrounding mountains for days. But they never located Kenny. No sign of a fall. No evidence of an accident. And strangely, no sign of the mysterious M cave. Over the years, many theories have appeared online. Some believe Kenny may have fallen into a hidden mine shaft. Others believe he simply got lost in the rugged desert terrain. But some people remain fascinated by Kenny's original story. The story of a strange cave that caused his body to vibrate. A cave that he ran away from in fear. And a cave that he may have tried to find again, right before he disappeared. To this day, the disappearance of Kenny Veach remains unsolved. Explorers and hikers have searched the mountains where he went missing, but no one has ever confirmed the location of the mysterious M cave. And no one knows what really happened during Kenny's final hike. But one thing is certain. Somewhere in the mountains of the Nevada desert, there may still be a cave that no one has ever found again. In August of 1966, 19-year-old Laurel Jane Babcock traveled to the Grand Canyon with friends. The group planned to spend time hiking and enjoying the scenic trails along the canyon's rim. Laurel was excited about the trip. Like many visitors, she wanted to explore one of the most famous natural wonders in the United States. The Grand Canyon is massive. The canyon stretches for 277 miles, and in some areas it reaches depths of more than a mile. Even experienced hikers must be careful navigating the trails. During the trip, Laurel decided to go for a hike. Some reports suggest she may have been exploring near one of the canyon trails. Others believe she may have wandered away from the group to explore the area alone. At first, no one thought anything was unusual. Visitors often split up temporarily while exploring the park. But when Laurel failed to return, her friends became worried. They began searching nearby trails and viewpoints. But there was no sign of her. Soon park rangers were notified. Authorities launched a search across the surrounding areas of the Grand Canyon. Rangers explored trails and cliffs. Search teams scanned steep canyon walls. Helicopters searched the rugged terrain from above. But the Grand Canyon is an incredibly challenging place to search. Sheer cliffs, hidden ledges, and deep crevices can easily hide someone from view. Despite the large search effort, no trace of Laurel was ever found. No backpack, no clothing, no footprints, nothing. Over the years, several theories have been suggested. One possibility is that Laurel may have accidentally fallen from one of the canyon's cliffs. The Grand Canyon's steep drop-offs make accidents a real danger for hikers, but investigators found no evidence of a fall. Another theory is that she may have wandered into a remote area and become lost. However, search teams carefully examined many surrounding trails. Still, no clues were discovered. And because millions of people visit the Grand Canyon each year, some investigators considered another disturbing possibility: that someone may have encountered Laurel before she disappeared. But again, there was no evidence to confirm this. More than 50 years later, the disappearance of Laurel Jane Babcock remains one of the unsolved mysteries connected to the Grand Canyon. The park continues to attract visitors from around the world. Tourists stand at the rim every day looking out over the canyon's massive landscape. But hidden somewhere within that vast wilderness may be the answer to a mystery that has never been solved. The Grand Canyon is one of the most breathtaking places on Earth, but its size and rugged terrain can also hide secrets. And sometimes, people who enter the canyon are never seen again.